Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with author, speaker, expert, and entrepreneur Michael Harris. He considers himself passionately diverse or simply a lover of so many different thoughts and activities. He is the author of the #1 best-selling book, Falling Down, Getting Up. He is also a contributing author with Rick Frishman and Wendy Lipton-Dibner on the #1 best-selling book, Experts Success Solutions. Michael's unique background includes small business ownership and being a sought-after yoga expert, and is driven by an incredible enthusiasm for living life to its fullest. In his spare time, he loves to hike in the mountains near his home in Central Oregon. His goal in 2022 is to climb a remote butte a week to discover what is really on the top. Enjoy this interview.
Good morning.
Michael Harris, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for taking a minute out.
Absolutely. You got a couple of minutes, Joe.
Yeah, I hope
not
so.
just a minute. You got whatever you need.
That's right. Sometimes I get too colloquial. So you got some, you got some jazz wit going on over there.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about your love of jazz.
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking back in 5th grade, I started playing the sax, and it was really because of my older brother, Bill, and I kind of wanted to emulate him. And over the years, I was never able to, emulate what he was doing because, he just accelerated. It was like, imagine, a 5-year-old learning to ride a bike. Riding against somebody in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I could get on my bike and ride it and start to move it around and do some certain things. But, when I saw Bill run through the chords on the sax when he wasn't moving the keys and just holding it with the thumbs, I thought, holy crap, how can he do that? Or pick up my old Yamaha horn, and the sound that I would have come out of it, it was decent, right? But when he picked it up, he made it sound like his horn. And I said, how did he do that? And he said, it has nothing to do with the horn. He says, it has to do with the lungs. He says that the music comes from inside. And it's just like, holy crap. I didn't get it, at first. Yeah. But anyway, I could go on and on, Joe.
Yeah, no, it's all good. No,
yeah.
I just kind of, you had mentioned it, and I kind of wanted to get a little bit of a background because that's a lot of what I do. But I've really been branching out. So I want to kind of go into your life, and the segue into your life is going to be this. We went through quite a time the last couple of years with COVID, the lockdown, the pandemic. How did you do during that time period, and how did it change you now that we're coming out of it?
You want me to answer that now?
Yeah.
I got, just like everybody else, I got hit sideways by COVID. In about 6 days, my life, took a huge flip-flop. I've never got COVID. I did end up getting the boosters, which surprised me to no end, but I did it. But my business at the time, I was involved in yoga studios, and I've had yoga studios over the years, and I was doing some rev shares with some studios around the country, and overnight, my rev share disappeared. So COVID didn't affect me physically, biologically, my body. I didn't get sick, but it killed my business. And that happened to a lot of people I know, right? It didn't kill them, but it killed their business. And so the ramifications of COVID, are just so broad. It's not just us, our physical being and getting each other sick and however all that biology stuff works. It's the effect on our society. Politically, it's people are knuckle butting over more than that. It's created huge chasms, between people and families. And at the same time, it's interesting because COVID has also brought the world together, which sounds like a contradiction, and it probably is. But think about the growth of Zoom overnight. All of a sudden, somebody in Bend, Oregon was frequently talking to somebody in Singapore or in London or, you name the place. And all these people started talking to each other around the world via Zoom, and it probably would not have happened that way if it wasn't for COVID.
So my follow-up to that is, I want to get a better handle on what you do for a living. So let's transport you right now to the front of a career day classroom with a bunch of third graders, and one of them looks up and says, "What do you do for a living, and how are you qualified to do it?" How would you answer that child?
Oh, I love that question, Joe. And what came to me immediately, it says, let's say, if I can use your name, Joe. Joe, I do the same thing you do. What do you mean? I said, come up here and tell us about your last vacation, what you did. Joe comes up, tells the classroom about his last vacation. We went to the beach, we played in the sand, we ran in the surf, we did all these things. And I said, you just had your first speaker training lesson in show and tell in third grade. Says, I do the same thing, but I do it with adults. I help adults do show and tell on any stage they want, whether it's podcasts, whether it's presentations, whether it's live stage. And it's all just really teaching them the same thing you just did, describing your vacation.
That's excellent. So what was your dream when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I thought that I was going to work for my dad. My dad was very much entrepreneurial. He had a number of businesses. The primary business is he was an oil and gas jobber. He was the largest independent gas distributor in Oregon. He had about 100 stations. He died in 85. He had about 100 gas stations and some other things too, but about 100 gas stations, primarily in Oregon and Washington, most of them Oregon, but some Washington. And so I thought that I was going to go into the gasoline business. I mean, that's his dad, my grandfather, started the company years ago in Boise, Idaho. And then my dad, when his dad died, he took it over. And then even when I got out of high school, Joe, my first job wasn't really a job. It was leasing a station from my dad, a gas station, and owning my first gas station. So I thought that was going to be my trajectory throughout life, was doing that, and eventually taking over the company, like myself and my brothers.
So what shifted? What was the big shift to get you to where you're at today?
Oh, so much happened. One of the things was that I really had a huge love for photography. So I thought, a lot of my friends, and we grew up in an upper middle class type family. A lot of my friends, their dad owned a company or their parents owned their own businesses, and a lot of them would go off and do something else for a while. So I decided I was going to go off and do photography for 10 years. And then perhaps come back to the company, because I had this creative side of me that always wanted to find something to create. And so I went off and did that, but at the same time, I had gone through, I used to drink a lot, I used to smoke a lot, I got into trouble a couple of times. I ended up having peripheral vascular disease at 27 years old. They were going to cut off both my legs. And my dad had just died. And so there was a lot of emotional stuff going on, a lot of health issues going on. And then when my dad died, there was a lot of family infighting, I'll say, about what the outcome of what the company should be. And it ended up that one of my uncles tended to or ended up with the primary company. And so I'm laying in a hospital bed. My dad had passed a year earlier. The company had gone to my uncle, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Well, the first thing that I did was get sober. So I've been sober now since 1988. And then I just started going, okay, well, what am I going to do? I started yoga. I started, liking it. It made my body feel better as I was moving it. I was walking a lot. I was moving my body. I started doing more yoga. But then by the mid-90s, I've always been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. By the mid-90s, I started doing some option trading, and, I'd work a couple of hours a day in the morning from like 5 to 7, and then I'd have the rest of the day off. And I made a ton of money, and I decided that I was going to go to a yoga teacher training to heal my body. I didn't want to become a teacher. I wanted to heal my body. So I went to this training. I was there for 13 weeks. It was really intensive. My body totally changed. I got stronger. Everything happened. All the pain in my body that I've been carrying was gone. Well, a week later, Joe, I was teaching. A year later, I had my first studio. Then I had another studio. I started training a bunch of other people within the community that I was in. I've trained 6,000 or 7,000 teachers. I've also, over the years, with my company that was killed by COVID, Yoga Business Expert, where I was coaching yoga studios all over the world in business, how to essentially attract, enroll, and retain their students. And so that became quite successful. We did, I'm estimating 40 to 50 million in sales with a 20 to 30% net on that. So it was a decent business. It's growing again. There's possibilities back out there again because everything's changed again. It's brought it back to life in a new way. But today, again, like I was telling that third grader, I now help people really get their stories out. I have this passion for story, and I believe in today's world right now that we need to speak up. We need to get our voices heard. And like what you do, you bring all these people on your shows, and they all tell their stories, and some of the listeners connect with the story and some won't. But by doing this exchange of stories, so to speak, I think that we make the world a better place. There's places in the world right now where you cannot say the word war, or you go to jail for 15 years. People are not allowed to speak. And I almost feel like today that it's more important than ever to get our voices out without them getting suppressed, because we need to push against that suppression, I believe, to help make this world a better place.
I agree. I think it's fundamental that we get the stories out. I've noticed with this advent of podcasting and interviews that it's a really good modern version of therapy. It really increases our acumen of understanding other people, our empathy, and there's nothing more than people like to do than to dispense their story. And we all have a story. And, that's the beauty. I think that hopefully we all learn from COVID is that we need community and we need each other. There's bonds that exist that can't just be done over electronics and digital, binary pieces. We have to be around each other. We have to share that life that we've all lived.
Absolutely.
And for somebody like you in your capacity that you operate as a mentor for people, who would be a mentor for you, a hero, somebody that you look up to?
Well, I may surprise you with this one. guy named Fred. And why do I say Fred? Well, this goes back to when I was a kid. I was 12 years old, and I had a near-death experience. And when I had this near-death experience, there was this guy standing next to me with blue jeans and a red plaid shirt. His name was Fred. I talked to him all the time. And after that near-death experience, and I came back to my body and started doing what I was doing, Fred has always been there. Fred has always guided me. It seems kind of woo-woo-ish, but it's like, I talk to Fred probably every single day, Joe. Every single day. Now, let me step back again a little bit. I mean, certainly my brother Bill was a mentor towards me in many ways. Both my mom and my dad were huge mentors towards me. And, my dad used to always say, you got two ears and one mouth. Learn to listen twice as much as you talk. Well, that's hard for me, Joe, because I can keep talking, right? And then, my mom was really passionate about, principles and living your principles. And it's not that my dad wasn't, but especially after Dad passed and before my mom passed, we talked a lot about that and about the principles and knowing what they are and also allowing them to move, that principles aren't just like this static thing, like a rock or something. I mean, they are, but they're not, because your principles and your values change over time. And, for good and bad sometimes, but it's like understanding that process and allowing it to simply unfold. And then, I've got a number of various, business type mentors that I've leaned on over the years. Again, my brother was a big mentor because he was highly involved in lots of different things as well. I'm trying to think if there's somebody that stands out. I really liked Steve Jobs a lot. He was considered an SOB by a lot of people, but he was also very focused. Like, he wanted to do like the iPhone, right? He didn't want to do 100 different things. So when he stepped away from Apple, the guy that stepped in introduced about 100 products. And then when Steve came back to Apple, he brought it back down to 10 again. So I really appreciated his ability to focus, be more single-minded. And that's hard for me because I call myself multi-passionate or passionately diverse because I like to do so many different things. But what I've learned to do with those different things is when I'm doing it, focus on that one thing. And then I can do whatever else I want to do at another time. So I think that Steve kind of exemplifies that to an extent, that single-minded focusedness.
So every day you wake up, you have all these things that you look forward to, that you do. What is it that drives you? What is it that you genuinely look forward to every day?
I have a passion to connect. Like even today, here it is. I don't know when this is going to be released, but it's Monday morning, first thing. I would, hop on a podcast. There's so many different things I could do Monday morning, first thing, but it's being on a podcast, talking to another individual, connecting, having a conversation with somebody about life, this free exchange. So that's something I really like doing. And I'm going to throw something else in there too. I live in the mountains of Central Oregon, and I have a huge passion for being outdoors. This week, it's going to remain in the 70s, and then Saturday, we might get a little bit of snow. So every day this week, I'm going to get out. And me and a buddy here, we kind of have a joke as we're mostly off trail, and somebody will say, well, what trail did you go on? And we like to say, well, trail is for tourists, you know. We like to find our own path, and that's true, finding our own path, whether it's in the woods, whether it's in the mountains, whether it's in the desert, whatever. But it's like finding our own path in life, finding that intuitive guide that's going to help us take that next step, you know, down our own path.
Well, if you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger version of yourself, you know, maybe before you got sober in '88, and you could give that young version one piece of advice based on what you've learned throughout these years, the wisdom that you've gained, what would you tell your younger version?
Well, that's a whole book, Joe. The idea of do it now. You know, procrastination has caused a lot of issues for me, like putting off. And, you know, you asked about the mentors earlier. You know, W. Clement Stone believed that the secret of life was to do it now. And he told himself over 100 times a day, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now. So I would say one of the things for me would be like, do it now, take action. And in many ways, I've learned how to do that, but my younger self was, oh, I can wait. I can do it some other time. You know, but now it's like, do it now.
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of touched on jazz, but, you know, the one thing that really moves us, and I think we learned this over the pandemic, is art. You know, whether we're watching TV or film or a painting or a book or an album, what is the seminal piece of art for you, whether it's a book or an album, that you always come back to, that's always made you feel good about life?
Well, if I'd say one piece of music, this is kind of fun. I was at the grocery store yesterday, and off in the corner, I hear somebody playing a violin. I came out to the parking lot, and it was loud. And, you know, they're playing Pachelbel, and it was like, oh, my God, you know, and just the flow of that music and that piece is just remarkable, you know, and I just like, you know, they were wanting money, you know, that they were playing for money, but it was just like, it emanated everywhere throughout the parking lot. It was so loud. It was remarkable, Joe. I forgot your question now.
Well,
I was in that piece.
Yeah, no, I dig it, and I've been in that mode too, where I've come out. I came out of a Royals game, the last game that we played of the year. We beat Seattle in a miraculous fashion. We beat them like 13-12, and I came out, and there was a saxophonist with the guitarist, and it was kind of a Django Reinhardt kind of feel to it, that gypsy jazz, and it was awesome. Everybody was waltzing by and looking, so I always loved that. But my more, I mean, that could be a really good part of the answer, but it's, you know, in your life, what piece of music or book have you read that you come back to that's always made you feel good?
Oh, there's a couple of them, and Pachelbel is definitely one of those. I do like listening to a lot of jazz, and even like some of my brother's pieces, like the Bill Harris Quintet, and some of the work that he did. I still enjoy listening to much of that. There's a book by Michael Singer called The Surrender Experiment, and it's really about surrendering and listening to that inner voice that you have. And I really love that idea. And then I'll throw one more out there, and it's a book by somebody named Paramahansa Yogananda, which is, the book is called Autobiography of a Yogi, and it's a pretty famous book. I mean, it's sold tens of millions of copies. And it's just a fascinating book, again, about our spiritual life and the possibilities that exist for us as individuals and as groups as well, but as individuals in our life.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your clients, but ultimately you lived your life. You have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
Wow. This is, again, it's another book. I go back to my out-of-body experience and my near-death experience as a kid. And, you know, for so long I resisted that, and I was very angry at God for a number of years, which contributed to my drinking and all that. And when I got sober, the first thing that I recognized was that it was over and I had to do something different to live differently. And I had to go back to that God that I was so angry at and ask for help. And, you know, hearing again that, you know, I mean, I knew at that time everything was going to be different. I mean, it was just like that knowingness that everything was going to be different. And this is the part that I go back to is everything is going to be okay. So coming back to who I am, I like to see the world that, you know, yeah, there's a lot of messed up stuff going on. I mean, all everywhere in all different aspects of life. And at the same time, I have to remind myself that everything's going to be okay. And if one person that listens to this podcast has some type of internal shift that makes them feel better, makes them smile at the kid at the store, or whatever it is, then I feel like I've done my work. And I might not even know what my work is sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I 100% get it.
Yeah.
So I want to end this on a triumphant note, and I'm curious, in all of the clients and all of the people that you've touched with the work that you've done, what's been one of the fan letters or responses that you've gotten that really, really warms you, that makes you feel good?
I got one recently from somebody, and that they wrote me a note, and they live up in Canada, and they wrote me this note, and they were somebody that had really been struggling a lot. And they had read my book. I have a book called Falling Down, Getting Up, and they read this book, and they wrote me this note and basically just said, you know, I was floored. Said, my life has now changed. Said, no matter what's going on in my life, I know that I can get through this. You know, and she went on, and we actually ended up having a conversation as well about it. This was about 2 months ago. And it's just like, you know, to know that somebody was affected by what I put out there and that it helped them live a better life, you know, brings a lot of joy to me. You know, and even now, my eyes are a little teary, Joe, just thinking about it. You know, it's just like, wow, I affected this person. I didn't know him before, right? And somehow this person was affected by that. And
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. So, Michael, before we get off here, I want to get to the good business of your books and what you do, anything related to your life and world. Where is the best place for the listeners out there to go and to get that?
The best place to get started is michaelbharris.com. Michael B is in book, so michaelbharris.com. And there's some various information there about what I do. And if a listener out there wants to start to find a way to get their story out in whatever, whether it's book, whether it's stage, whether it's presentation, whether it's podcasting, whatever it might be, is you can opt in to there on the homepage, michaelbharris.com. There's an opt-in that gives you a lot of free resources. We have a lot of videos and download type stuff that's absolutely free that somebody can use to get started telling their story. If they're already telling stories in some aspect, is perhaps get stronger at it and tweak something and get a little bit better as well. So it's not just for the new person, it's also for the experienced speakers as well. We work with a lot of experienced people as well.
This has been wonderful, Michael. Thank you for opening up. Good luck with everything. It's been a joy to get to know you, man.
Thank you, Joe. I know there's lots of rabbit holes we could have gone down, so thank you for keeping us on course.
Man, my brain works a lot like yours, and I know I could really start diving in there.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's the beauty of human connection, and I think it's just what we've talked about and what you've talked about. It's that sharing the story, the commonality, but I'm just so glad that we got a good synopsis of you and your life. Thank you for opening up, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, and music around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.